we are. Okay, thank you for joining, everyone. This was a little bit last minute, but we thought it would be a good idea to do a Q&A session about the permaculture immersive experience, 7-day experience at Zee Barn, given by Peppi. Shall I introduce myself first, Peppi, so that people know that what weirdo is
Please,
joining this
please.
Q&A? Essentially, I was at Being Gathering, which is a festival that takes place every 2 years on Boomland, in case you've ever heard of Boom Festival. And a nice thing about it is there's a lot of healing modalities, and there are a lot of there's a lot of ways that they are working with regenerative ideas on Boomland, but there were also some talks, and I joined Peppi's talk about regenerative living. And I had been interested in permaculture for a while, not necessarily because I want to start my own farm but there are a lot of principles that I think that can help me in my personal quest to live more healthily, to live in community, to do something to live in not just a more sustainable way, but a regenerative way, so that I can also have a positive impact and to understand my own agency. So I joined the talk with very few expectations, but I was actually really impressed by how Peppi was able to change my mindset and mind about a lot of different topics in such a short amount of time. So I immediately said that I wanted to join the immersion that Peppi is organizing from the 18th to the
24.
24th,
Yes.
which is on Zee Barn, about 15 minutes drive from Ericeira. Do I have that right?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Uh-huh. And and I am also happen to do online marketing. So I thought to help Peppi, and this is of course also a way of community where we can all support each other in different ways with each our own superpowers and skills. And this is why I thought it was a good idea to maybe do a Q&A session about this particular immersion. So, Peppi, I'd love it if you would introduce yourself to the people.
Thank you, Rosanna. Yeah. So my name is Peppi Gauci. I'm actually originally from Malta, but I've been now living fully here for these last 4.5 years. And yeah, and all that time actually has been quite immersed into co-creating this project that I'm living on, which is Zee Barn. And this is not my first project. It's my second like personal project, but I've done, over 20 plus projects for different communities and people around the world. And here we're creating quite a beautiful forest garden space with a lot of different pockets where, we have a fluid community in here, and we have a number of practices that basically make up our lifestyle. My partner does macrobiotic food and teaches yoga. I do certain other treatments with sound modalities and sound journeys. We also do some special like community singing circles and other small events. And some people also host other retreats here. And then we combine these things together. So yeah, my work is basically about bringing permaculture out of the stereotype where people think of it as something that has to do with agriculture or gardening. Of course,
Hmm.
there's a lot of messages and lessons that we learn from there because most of the lessons come from nature itself. Or actually, sorry, all of the lessons come from nature itself, and most of them are related to the immediate environment that we have, and that would be, gardens or forests or rivers or beaches where we would find. And so the way that we can actually really relate and get a lot more insight and depth and richness for me in a way is by having an environment that actually speaks those values and speaks also that abundance, and also showcases a lifestyle that's possible even though we live in a modern day society basically. And there's a lot of ways and modalities that we can abstract from nature in order to find ways how we can actually, shift certain things in our life, of course, but still live a modern lifestyle and live regeneratively and get a lot of more add-ons and a lot more buzz in our life, you know, when we are kind of living in this way.
Thank you for explaining that, Peppi. And yeah, and this is also what appealed to me when I heard your talk. Like, I love that you come from a point of view where nature gives us all the answers, and essentially you're teaching us how to reconnect to that and to really listen and learn and integrate those lessons. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Shall we move on to the questions?
Please.
All right. So the first question is, could you go a bit deeper into what regenerative permaculture is?
Yeah. So yeah, basically we have two quite full-bodied words over here. You know, the word permaculture in itself is has been devised by originally by these two Australian people, and there's two words in there: the word permanence and the word culture. Now, culture also has the word cult, so basically there's some practice between humans, you know, that is involved in order to create a culture. And the word permanence is coming from, you know, the nature's permanence, not the you know, the projected way of permanence from the human psyche, so to speak, which is quite rigid, you know, and quite fixed. Permanence for nature is always in the constant change. It's evolving, you know. That's how nature actually is regenerative in itself, because it's regenerates through that change. There's always this evolution happening and tweaks and changes happening for nature to continue, right? And to regenerate. So permaculture bases the whole study, the whole science, and eventually the whole design aspect, because we eventually translate permaculture when we study it into a design, be it of whatever. That could be design your lifestyle, design your house, design your rooftop garden, design your forest garden, whatever that is. So how do we then look into nature and basically get these informations that we need in order to build up that design? So basically, eventually, permaculture translates into this design. And it's very important for me to say that this design, ultimately, when we study permaculture, we understand that permaculture is mainly also referring directly and indirectly, most of the time, to relationships between components. So if we have, you know, a relationship between, usually an ecosystem starts when there's more than two, so it's a trio kind of thing, and then it starts to build up. So when we are building an ecosystem, you know, we are looking at the relationships between the components that we bring in or are brought in from nature, if that is the case, and how does that relationship work out? So when we study those relationships, then we understand how the intelligence of nature is creating ecosystems, creating functional communities, resilient communities, and how the intelligence grows as the diversity grows, and the amount of those relationships also grow within the percentage of cooperation rather than competition. So in a nutshell, permaculture is that, basically. And regenerative is, of course, now we are moving, at least for a lot of people, we are understanding that, you know, sustainable living isn't enough. It just doesn't cut it. You know, the word sustainable means to sustain, able to sustain. It just doesn't do enough business, you know, just to sustain ourselves and stop there. So we really need to also switch on the mindset that we need to go beyond that, and we need to think on how we can live regeneratively rather than sustainably. And for me, that, you know, like poses a lot of questions, philosophical ones as well, about like, how do I live my life then in order to live a regenerative lifestyle? And of course, that then for me, like, I also make a little bit of a division to see what is inside, like, and that belongs to my physical being and my psychological way, beliefs, and spirituality also, but also, of course, my actions, right? So my actions and design my lifestyle and contribute with my energy and my time to regenerate at least the space, the immediate space where I live in, which is then where permaculture comes in a lot, because permaculture teaches us how we can redesign the spaces, the immediate spaces that we live in. Because if that becomes quite a grassroots movement, if that becomes something where everybody practices, then we are changing the world immediately, basically. And we don't need to wait for governments. We don't need to wait for any other exterior power, because we do have that power to shift what is going on in our immediate environment, provided there's communities in there, right? Because people are at the center of that. So regenerative permaculture bridges the ideas of like recreating the ecosystem around us in order for them to be resilient, to be diverse, to be intelligent, and also continue the education of having a regenerative mindset. So like, what does that mean? And that, of course, means different things for different people. So that is why then we need quite a bit of time to sit together and explore, what that might look like, but at the same time, it's really beautiful. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, if I give you a radio station, and then you open that radio station and you start to tune into different frequencies, then you start to hear the wavelengths that you before couldn't hear, right? But they're there. But you need that tool in order to start listening and making sense of the frequencies. And that for me is like the beautiful feedback that I get when I share permaculture with people, because it's kind of like handing over that radio station, and people
so
all
that
of a
people
sudden
can
can
see
start
how it
to tune in.
resonates.
Exactly.
That's great. And do you think that these lessons can be used anywhere, even if I don't have a garden or a farm, for example?
This is yeah, the one of the most beautiful questions I love to answer, because yes, as long as we are alive, we need variables that are very similar, right? We need fresh air, we need clean water, we need comfortable spaces to live in, and we need community. And for as long as we are human, we need also this ideology of permaculture. Okay, like in previous times, people didn't call it permaculture because there was different, but we see a lot of attributes coming from various different cultures in our ancestorship around the world, in our Aboriginal people. And yeah, we do not need to per se have our own garden. We do not need to have our own project per se. But the moment you understand permaculture is the moment you are equipped with a lot more knowledge and also a lot more wisdom. And you start to see the world differently, and you also start to see opportunities, whereas before maybe you didn't. You start to understand also, I have people that come here and volunteer just because they've seen that opportunity come in their life, and they don't have their own thing, they don't have their own project, but when they come with that equipment, they can switch in a lot more and get a lot more out of the experience, for example. And yes, permaculture isn't really just about gardening, it's about relationships. So how can we tune in and finding a lot more of those cooperative relationships in our lives? And that is for everybody, really. So the more we learn about that, the more we are able to align our lives into systems or spaces or communities and situations where we can see ourselves in a multiple win scenario. And then life becomes a lot more interesting and fun and beautiful too.
That sounds great. Yeah, and for example, one of the things that I hope to learn is I'm studying community deeply. So if I can learn how nature does community or relationship, as you're describing it, maybe I can take some of those lessons into, my human everyday life and see how that works. And that has nothing to do with farming, right? But of course, I'm also interested in the parts where, something that really bothers me is that every food that I eat has to be purchased somehow. And I think as more people, but also groups, organizations, governments, neighborhoods even are learning about these principles, maybe in the next few years, it will all look very differently. Shall I move on to the next question, Peppi?
Please.
Shall we talk about the immersion? So in the immersion, can we talk about, maybe you want to mix it up because I would like to know what is included in the immersion and what are the topics covered throughout the 7 days?
Yes. Yeah, so these are 7 days, which are, quite full, but we also have quite a bit of free time in between to enjoy, the space, and also to digest what we share, because some of the things we share are quite packed. But we also start with observation skills, and we also practice some meditation and also some yoga, so that it opens us up also into the space. It gives us the ability to be more present, be more in ourselves, in our body, and also because that is the main tool that we have, through this body and through our awareness, then we relate to everything else that's around us. So for me, that is one thing which I like to link in the regeneration and permaculture, is like we also need to really address ourselves, and bring ourselves first in that balance, because if we are not in a good balance, then nothing really out of our body can actually relate in a perfect way. So we start a bit of that work as well here while we're here on that week. And then we cover the permaculture principles, and those are 12, and each one actually has quite a lot of depth into it. And through those principles, we start to understand kind of the tools of permaculture, basically, and what we have in our toolkit. And yeah, we also have quite a bit of hands-on for those who would like. So we learn about soil as well. Soil, where basically we don't look at it as dirt, but we see how complex the soil is, and how when we understand the soil, basically we can all of a sudden make a big difference if we want to really do something about it. And we all eat, and we all are humans, and we have our biological needs, and how we can actually connect our biological needs actually in a cyclical system as well. So for example, here we have composting toilet systems, and the composting toilet systems, just like in Boomland, for example, everything that comes out is returned back into the earth, but it's not just thrown. There's an understanding of how it's managed in order for it to be productive. So like what kind of bacteria are we then, and fungi are we then using in order to break our components down so that they're beneficial for the soil, for example. And one of the things which I didn't mention being festival is like, because as you know, it was raining and we didn't have electricity, so my presentation wasn't even there. But one of the things is like how our ancestors, we look at our ancestors, all our ancestors, in order to live, they were nomadic. They weren't stationary. Okay, this is going back in time. And then quite a number of years, substantial amount of years after that, is when people and communities and settlements started to settle. But that is only after they realized how actually they could cultivate their relationship with the soil. And there's a big study in there which only got revealed in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, to understand how, for example, the Aztecs and the Mayas and the Incas, they managed to feed, hundreds of thousands of people in the civilizations that they started, for example. Similarly, also in India, there's certain things which are very similar. But there's a lot of these components of these studies always relate to how people were doing vast practices to regenerate the soil so that they could actually create the food that they need, basically. And so, unfortunately, in these last 100 years, we've been driven away from that. And through the whole chemical warfare that's been coming out after the Second World War, we have been even like driven away psychologically, and there was nothing in our mainstream education to teach us the importance of that. But this is super important if we are ever to think of us as being a regenerative community. There's a lot of these practices that need to be done. So we give some importance also to the soil, and we learn how we can improve soil life. Also about, of course, creating compost, then how we could design our garden beds if we are wanting to design garden beds, how we could use renewable resources that are around us, because the nature is full of renewable resources. And how do we actually look at nature to see these resources where they are and how they can meet our needs and how they can meet also the needs to continue this regeneration. Yeah. So we look at these. We look at also, of course, at water and different ways of relating with water, from gray water filtration and recycling of water, and how water falls, you know, in the whole hydrological cycle, how what that means for nature, and how it's important for the whole hydrological cycle to be intact in order for it to filter through and again regenerate. We're always looking at nature regenerating, but we've never really been given that tool to look at it in that way from a conventional point of view. We also learn how to care for plants and trees and also do their maintenance. We also are within a full forest garden here, so we will be learning by actually being within it. So looking at the forest garden, how this one specifically here has been designed, what are the challenges with it, what are, you know, the positives of that basically, and what that means and what it needs in order to have it ongoing. And we learn a bit about also syntropic agriculture, which is also a topic in itself. We don't go through a lot of hands-on depth of that, but there'll be the opportunity to understand it. Then we also talk about community living and various ways of community living. There's various communities embodying various beliefs. We are a very small community here, quite fluid because we have people that come in and go, and some people return, and some of us are here all the time. So that's our format over here because it's our capacity with what we have as in like the infrastructure. And we talk about the food production, seed saving, also the importance of saving the seeds. We also covered a topic which is called microgreens and sprouts, because a lot of people, especially even if you are nomadic, you can still have your personal garden within weeks. You know, within like a few weeks, you can have a harvest, basically. You know,
I'm
it's
sprouting
something
lentils right now. So.
amazing. That's it. That's it. You got it. You got it. So yeah, this is one of the, you know, like ways of having your own organic and part food, no, like which is highly nutritious as well within a small space. Yes, and then we also talk a little bit about fermentations, and see types of fermentations that basically I create around here, and that is like from the material that we have around.
And this can also, all these things can be done in a city setting, in an
Everything can
apartment.
be done in the cities. I had one person who was here in one of the courses, and he developed a full rooftop garden in Malta. He was here in Portugal and he developed a rooftop garden, and he loves to play with a lot of these fermentations because he follows quite a way which is called the Korean farming technique.
Mm.
And Korean farming technique talks a lot about different fermentations.
Yeah.
So
With the
basically
kimchi and all the stuff that they make.
various bacteria and fungi, yeah, to replenish the soil, and it makes a big difference in the plants, of course.
Great. And so just, is that the topics or are there more topics?
So these are
Like,
the main topics. These are the main topics that we talk about.
amazing. And then on the website, so it's a 7-day immersion, which means that we actually stay at Zee Barn. Like, what are the options for staying, and is that included, and how does it work with the food and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it's an immersion because we're completely immersed, living together here. So we also get that community experience of being here for a full week. And, you know, for some of us, that is quite a different thing in our life. And it's I love to see the, you know, the beauty of the connections that people create when they're here for a week or more, and how that evolves with the dynamics that we help to co-create together. And we all participate a little bit in the cooking also. During that week, we all share some of the cooking duties. We all share a little bit of the cleaning duties. And yeah, we all live here. So we have different places in here. We have one big dormitory. So it's very comfortable and it's quite spacious as well. In fact, a lot of people tell me it's the most beautiful dormitory they've ever seen. And then we have two small cabins. And for this coming week, those two cabins have already been taken. So the space I believe that's left is in the geodesic. I believe there's a space for two people if they come in a couple in the geodesic dome, and the rest in the dormitory at the moment. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. Okay, and then the food I assume is included in the
And
pricing.
all the food is included in the rates.
Hmm.
Exactly. We'll be
And will
having,
some of the food come from the farm?
of course, yes.
Hmm. Great. Amazing. Okay, so another question that we collected was, what does a normal day look like? You already said a little bit about that we also will have meditation and yoga, but can you like give me a bit of an idea of like we get up at a certain time and how could a day in the life at Zee Barn look like during the immersion?
Yeah, yeah. So I like to leave it until the last moment to make the timetable because I love to observe the weather a lot and see how it's going to be in order to, to pack up as much as possible in that week. But yeah, we start usually around 8 o'clock together, the first communal thing, and then we flow through the day where we will have some morning activity. That could be also the meditation or the yoga. Then we also have something else. Then we also come together to cook. We eat, and then we will have, some free time in the afternoon. We'll have some other event, hands-on activity, and then sometimes we'll have another like some presentation also. So we'll be also looking sometimes at some presentations
Hmm.
in the spaces that we have here. And then some of the evenings are just free, so everybody can just stay together and, like share stories. And sometimes we also sit around the fire, we play some music together.
Mm.
Sometimes maybe we want to also watch a documentary together. Of course, it's a related documentary that's educational.
Hmm.
And so that is more or less how the days are presented. And then we also have some excursions, potentially in some places close by here. And we'll also go one day we'll also go and spend a few hours at one of the beaches close by here too.
Mm.
Yeah, because all these different places, they all have their own ecosystems as well. And I love to go and, as well as we entertain ourselves, but we also learn something from them too.
Nice. Yeah, I forgot to ask earlier about the food. Is it for people who have special diets? What is the food like?
Yeah, we cater vegetarian, and if there's someone that's vegan, we also cater for that. That is mainly the main um, uh, dietary
Hmm.
restrictions that we
Right.
cater for. Of
And
course,
if
if there's
someone has
someone,
allergies, we try to take care of that. So
of
that
course, yeah, yeah, yes.
amazing. Great. Okay. Next question is, who is this immersion for, and can anyone join this immersion?
Yeah, I've had so many various walks of life, people from walks of life in my courses. And so I would say it's for everyone that has an interest and, and has the capacity, to stay a week, and also practice and, has the interest and is keen and creating some form of change in their life. This is a course for them. This is, an immersion for them.
Hmm.
And yeah, of course, we need to be able to move our body and just do some things with our hands, like in order to participate fully. But yeah, I would say it's for anyone that wishes. And usually it's people, anyone from the age of 20 something. I've had people up till 68 years old coming here
Wow.
and participating.
Interesting. Okay. So even if I have no experience in even gardening or that kind of stuff, I could still participate.
I think people that especially don't have any experience in gardening, they can learn so much and have such a like a, you know, quite a deep experience in it all, which will be quite amazing actually.
Amazing. Okay, and then yeah, we actually talked a little bit already on the hands-on activities. We talked about that sometimes there will be a presentation, so some theory or where you explain some of the concepts to us. But what does hands-on activity, what does that mean? Could you give some examples?
Yeah, so again, these things could be like we could be trimming a tree, we could be making some compost, we could be preparing some biochar fermentation. We could be also planting a tree. We could be seeding something. We could be mulching around the tree. We'll also look at tools and understand, you know, like the importance of tools when we come to do something of the scale. So, you know, people understand how tools work and how we should look after them and how we should see them. Yeah, so there'll be a lot of these activities of hands-on. Watering the garden, for example, is another important thing to understand. And we also, I didn't mention, but we would also look at irrigation. To understand the water flows and how we can actually budget, you know, this resource in order to have it cycle within our systems, for example. So yeah, there'll be some hands-on with this.
Sounds great. Okay, so these are most of the questions. If you stay tuned a little bit longer, there will be a little surprise that we will mention at the end. But first, before we reveal the surprise, shall we ask the people if there's any questions?
Completely.
Does anyone have a question?
I take it
think
it's a yes.
maybe Marianne wants to say something, but she's also driving.
I think she's muted.
Yeah, she's muted. Ask mute maybe.
So,
Let's see.
yeah, I
There
think,
it works.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We
we can
can
hear
hear
you
you.
now, Marianne.
I'm so glad I could join this. Well, it's from the car, but I
You're
really
here
wanted
with
to.
us.
So, yeah, but just my question is because I follow you for quite some time. I got to know Zee Barn through Simon Sutton, and so I follow you. And then, but I was wondering also, how often do you do these immersions? Because for me, this time slot you mentioned is not possible. But are there people throughout the year, or is it only once a year? Or
Thanks for the question.
yeah.
Thank you, Marion. Yeah, so actually recently I've opened up the dates, and then as soon as I have a group of people of say minimum 2 or 3 people, then I'll try and make that happen, you know. So that's what we did over here as well. I've opened up the dates. We had a couple of people that applied, and then we've opened up the call so that other people can also join on that week. So if you get a group of people together of say 3 and you say we have this week, can you make it happen for us, for example?
Oh wow.
Then we can make that happen.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
So it's not necessarily that it will happen every so often. It's just when you have someone. So this is a really great opportunity to join. It's unfortunate that you can't join this time, Marianne. So yeah, it's a bit unpredictable in terms of the next dates. So if you are kind of in a hurry or you've been curious for a while to learn about permaculture, this is a great opportunity to join. And the weather is beautiful, so it will be amazing. Yeah, thank you for the question, Marianne.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Does
Rosanna
anyone
also
have?
mentioned
Go
the
ahead.
weather. The weather is a key factor, of course. So for us, it's this is the prime time, you know, and also the garden is quite lush at the moment. We've been doing quite a bit of work, so it's not, you know, as in nature, not everything is blossoming all the time, but you know, this is the blossom time right now. But yeah,
Nice.
thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions? Or is this it for now? Going once, going twice. Is it time to reveal the little surprise that you have, Peppi?
I think so.
For people who are tuning in or maybe watching the recording after.
Yes. Shall you do that, Rosanna, or shall I?
Yeah, I can do it.
Do it.
So if you're watching this and if you made it this far, if you mention the webinar or Q&A session to Peppi in a message or via the website or email, you get a 10% off the entire immersion. So You can basically, that is valid until Saturday, 13th of July, 2024. So you have a couple of days to think about it, of course. No pressure, but the 10% will, you can use that on something else to treat yourself. So yeah, that's the surprise that Peppi had for you all. Is there anything I'm forgetting, Peppi?
Thank you for sharing all of that, Rosanna. No, I did take some notes, but I think we've covered a lot about the immersion. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and people can always message you or yeah, Zee Barn on Instagram or on the website if
exactly
there's anything,
exactly.
if they have any questions, right?
Exactly. There's always still the ways of reaching out, you know, and I'm usually checking at least Instagram, you know, not every day, but most days. I think Marion has another question there. She's
Yeah,
raising
do you have
her hand.
another question?
I think you're muted again. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm back. So, but yeah, the other question was, how do you, what's the transport? How do you get to your place? So, like,
Right.
I mean,
Thank you
is there?
Thank you for that. We are not very far from Lisbon. We're like 1 hour by car maximum. And
From Lisbon?
from Lisbon, yes. So we are like 45 minutes to an hour drive from Lisbon here. People sometimes take an Uber or sometimes they take a bus to Ericeira and then they can Uber from there, which costs about 8 or 10 euros. And we are actually very close to a small like village over here also. So there's like walking distance. There's also other amenities. You know, if you wanted to go to a cafe or a restaurant or, you know, just go for a little walk around. We are like a 45-minute walk to the beach, but, you know, also together we will go to the beach. So people usually can come also by their car. We have ample spaces to park the car here. Or I can help you to get an Uber by giving you the contacts to get an Uber to get here.
Yeah, and there are buses from Lisbon to Ericeira, so that is about, is it 40 minutes or something to Ericeira by bus, and then
Yes.
yeah, another 15 minutes by Uber or car to get to Zee Barn. Of course, we have a couple of people already. There's already a group participating, and we can always together, if someone has a car, maybe you can get like a ride or something. We can maybe sort something out as well.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Is that all the questions, Marion or other people?
Yes, I think so now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, this is great. Thank you so much for your time, Peppi, and everyone who joined. Yeah, Marion and others, in case you want to rewatch some of this, there will be a recording. Yeah, you can always share with your friends, of course. Sharing is caring. So yeah, hopefully see you at the immersion.
Thank you so much, Rosanna, for also hosting this. And thank you, Mario, for your question and for being here also till the end. And yeah, wishing you a great afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.